Good evening, fellow Toastmasters.
Good evening.
And honored guests. Everywhere you look these days, somebody is talking about the thyroid and the problems that it has. This is actually pretty good news because a whole lot of people have problems with their thyroid. In fact, the American Thyroid Association estimates that 1 in 7 US adults has an underperforming thyroid, and about 60% of them don't even know it. The problem with this topic being everywhere is that there's a lot of inaccurate and incomplete information available. Now, I am not going to pretend that I can tell you everything there is to know about the thyroid in the time that we have together. But I do want to give you some key information so that you will know whether or not your thyroid deserves better. The thyroid is a small gland, butterfly-shaped, that sits right at the base of your neck. Its wings wrap around your windpipe, and it sits just below your Adam's apple. This tiny little gland is actually responsible for creating hormones that communicate through your entire body. Your thyroid hormones determine your metabolism and how well your body uses fat and carbohydrates for energy. It controls your heart rate. It's involved with body temperature control and how well you withstand cold and heat. It also helps to regulate your mood and helps to determine if you feel depressed or anxious. And it's involved with your sex organs and actually has a role in determining how fertile you are. But even though the thyroid sits here and does all of these things, the communication of that hormone pathway actually starts in your hypothalamus. Your hypothalamus releases TRH that goes to your pituitary gland, and your pituitary gland then sends TSH to your thyroid. Your pituitary gland is kind of like your control center. TSH is called thyroid stimulating hormone, and it is the way the pituitary gland tells the thyroid what to do. When it receives that message, the thyroid then creates two hormones. Primarily, it creates T4, which is the inactive form of the hormone. It also creates just a little bit of T3, which is the active hormone that can actually do something in your body. But most of the T3 comes from other parts of your body taking that inactive hormone T4 and converting it into the active hormone T3. So in order for you to feel like your thyroid is doing what it's supposed to, every single one of these steps has to occur. So where do the problems come from when we start feeling like maybe our thyroids aren't functioning the way they're supposed to? The first problem happens when those parts of your body that would normally convert T4 into the active form T3 actually end up creating what's called reverse T3. Now you can tell just by the name that this is not necessarily a good thing. We're reversing this active hormone into something that we actually can't use. But it's shaped close enough to T3 that it gets in the way of the cell. It actually gets in the way of T3 being able to bind with the cell. So its presence causes us to feel like there's not enough T3. The second problem is in the immune system, where antibodies can be created against the thyroid. Now, many of you may know somebody, or you yourself might have Hashimoto's, which is when antibodies are created that cause the thyroid to underperform. There are also antibodies that trigger Graves' disease, causing the thyroid to overperform. And we don't want either of these things. We want Goldilocks porridge here, right? We want everything to be just right, not too hot, not too cold. The third problem is in the liver. So the liver creates thyroid binding globulin. And it is basically this little catcher that goes through the blood and grabs a hold of T4 and T3, which on the one hand sounds like a good thing because it can keep the T4 and T3 from getting out of control, but it also then prevents the T4 and the T3 from doing its job. Imagine that the thyroid hormone is locked in a cage and can't do what it needs to do. And the fourth problem is when we're under stress. And the adrenal glands create cortisol, and that cortisol actually lowers the body's production of TSH, T4, and T3. Now, if you've ever had your thyroid tested, or you know somebody who's had their thyroid tested, you will know that most doctors will test only the TSH. Now, this is a problem because all it tells us is what is the pituitary gland telling the thyroid. That's it. It's not telling us any more than that. If the TSH level is off, the doctor might also test T4. They usually don't go beyond this, so you'll often only see TSH and T4. But all that tells us is, what did the pituitary gland tell the thyroid, and then did the thyroid create this inactive hormone? It doesn't tell us, is the immune system involved? Is the liver involved? Are we stressed? Is the rest of the body creating T3 that the cell can actually use, or is the rest of the body creating reverse T3? So there is a chance that you feel like you don't have a good functioning thyroid, even if the pituitary gland is doing its job. So what can you do about this if you think that your thyroid is not functioning as well as it could? Find a doctor or a healthcare practitioner who will help you see the whole pathway, who won't just look at what your pituitary gland is telling your thyroid, but will figure out what your thyroid is doing and what the rest of your body is doing and whether or not the cells are responding to that. Take the steps necessary to really support your thyroid. There are so many things that we can do to actually help our thyroids function better, to give them the support that they need in the form of food, lifestyle, supplements, as appropriate. And these three things actually have an impact throughout the whole pathway. Now this chart's about to get super busy, and I'm going to break my own rule about visual aids with this one. But I felt like I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't really show you how much impact you can have. The first thing is that you can adjust your lifestyle and your nutrient intake to support your thyroid in creating the hormone. You can keep things like stress from blocking the production of that T4 and T3 hormone. You can get enough selenium, which is necessary for your body to create T4. You can also do things that make sure that the rest of your body, right, once that T4 inactive hormone leaves the thyroid, actually convert it to T3 rather than converting it to reverse T3. Again, having the right nutrients for that conversion to occur and stopping those things in your life that force the body to create reverse T3 rather than T3. And finally, there are several things you can do, even down to your individual cells, so that they are responsive to that T3 hormone when it's available. When that T3 hormone shows up at the cell and knocks, that it'll actually let the T3 in so that you no longer feel like there's not enough thyroid activity. I realize that's a lot of information that I threw at you very quickly. I'm not expecting you to remember it, but what I want you to know by showing you that is that there are so many things that we can do to support our thyroids. And in many cases, the whole pathway can actually be recovered to the point that you feel like your thyroid is functioning optimally. Because let's face it, you and your thyroid deserve to feel better. In fact, you both deserve to feel amazing. Thank you.